Got open man. DJ Moore. End zone. Touchdown. Touchdown Bears.
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on. Down he goes. Brisker.
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
Pressure coming. He's in big trouble. Down he goes. Montez Sweat.
And etc.
Now, Bears Etc. brought to you by Chevy Drives Chicago, the official truck partner of your Chicago Bears.
Getting back on that horse after getting kicked off by the Ravens in Baltimore, the Bears stick in the AFC North and battle the Bengals in Cincinnati Sunday at noon. It's popular to say in this league, don't let one loss become two. It's Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. We discussed today on episode 182 of the Bears Etc. podcast. And this episode of Bears Etc. is brought to you by ChevyDriveChicago.com, the official truck of your Chicago Bears. Coming up, we visit with former Bengals quarterback Kenny Anderson, Batavia born and bred and one of 34 senior candidates for the 2026 Pro Football Hall of Fame. And we'll discuss what's next for the Bears. Tom, I like my own advice. Don't let one become two. Can the Bears do that?
Yeah, I think that's the path that Ben Johnson's trying to get this football team on. And he understands that the Ravens were a good opponent, but the Bears, they had a chance to beat them, and they probably should have. And they're getting ready to go play a good Cincinnati team that obviously is without Joe Burrow, but they got two of the best receivers in the National Football League. They have a good running back. They have a good quarterback. You know, they have a developing new defensive coordinator with some young linebackers. You don't know what the status of Trey Hendrickson is as one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. So there's a lot of questions leading up to the early part of this work week.
And as we said in episode of 181, you said, hey, it's going to be another week of questions about the quarterback. So Joe Flacco has apparently an AC joint sprain. It's painful, according to head coach Zach Taylor. He says he needs minimal reps to get ready. When you put all that together, what's your veteran eye tell you about Joe Flacco's availability Sunday?
He's a tough guy. He knows if he's going to be ready or not. He knows that if he can throw the ball accurately, that he is willing to do what it takes to play for Cincinnati. He's been able to go out there and with only being there for a couple weeks has had some record-setting performances. But listen, Zach Taylor's not going to tell Joe Flacco anything. Joe Flacco is going to tell the training staff and the coaching staff what he's capable of being, and they're going to have to take his word for it.
So his nickname in Baltimore, he earned it. It was Joe Cool. Apparently Joe Burrow had Joe Cool coming out of LSU when he lit the cigar after the national championship. And so he no longer could be Joe Cool. So his nickname now is Joe Calm and Affleck for Flacco. It's funny how 40 years old, Tommy. Caleb Williams was 11 years old.
Yeah, I'd call him Papa Joe Cool because he's older than all these kids in that locker room. He's got, kids in a family of his own that some of these guys don't as of yet. And, Joe Flacco, he surprised me, Jeff. When he played and won with Baltimore, he kind of you heard so much about the other parts of that football team. They really didn't focus on Joe Flacco, but he's gone on to have an incredible career of, just tremendous success, and he's doing for Cincinnati what they thought was in the rearview mirror once Joe Burrow got hurt.
Yep, no question. Joe Burrow, this is why you don't pick records before season, because, look, I kept talking about all these great quarterbacks Bears are going to play on the road and how challenging it would be here. So no Lamar Jackson, still lose to the Ravens. Joe Burrow's not available. Jaden Daniels was coming off an injury. So it's about who's available, who's healthy each week. It's a big crapshoot. And heck, the Bears injury report out as of Wednesday had 4 receivers on it. Did not practice.
That's exactly where I thought you were kind of steering me, because we want to talk about the quarterbacks around the league, and that's one position, and they all have backups. Some teams have to bring guys aboard. But when you look at these injury reports of position significance, those are more concerning to me than some of the other quarterback injury reports we've looked at.
How do you tell a cashier you're a Bears fan without telling them you're a Bears fan? With the Chicago Bears PNC Bank Visa Debit Card, which gets you exclusive discounts on Bears merchandise. Find out more at pnc.com/BearsCard. New addition to the Bears. a man who will start inside at the slot nickel. I'm not saying he's starting, but you're going to put him in there and leave him at one position, according to head coach Ben Johnson. That would be C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He comes with a reputation as being a very vibrant, loud player who will mix it up and ear hustle players on the other side of the ball to frustration. But he is familiar with Dennis Allen's defense, playing it 3 years in the first part of his career with the Saints, and he played a lot of nickel for Dennis Allen. He knows what kind of player he's getting. He had 6 interceptions last year for the world champion Eagles.
He's a young guy, man. He's 27 years old. If you tap into a guy that has potential and a future, you never know what you might be tapping into a guy that's going to be here for a significant period of time. So if you're going to bring a player aboard that you feel that can help a position significantly and have a role that is almost playable immediately, I'm all for it. Put him in there, see if he can play. And I think he's got some good surrounding alpha males inside that locker room, like TJ Edwards and Tremaine and Grady and some of the other guys that he can gravitate towards, or they can steer him in the right direction.
Yeah, he's one of these players that when you know he's on the schedule, you don't really want to deal with him as a player, right? Going up against a guy like that. And then when he's on your team, you love him up. And he's a Bear now.
Right. I mean, it's the Dennis Rodman effect for this guy.
Yeah, he's a serious dude, no question about it. Austin Booker also returning. What are your expectations? So it's been a minute now since he's played.
You know, I've seen Austin Booker come back, and, he came into the training camp and he was really playing at a high level. He had an arsenal of pass rush moves. He looked good in one-on-ones. He looked good against some of the competition that he was playing with until he got hurt. He got hurt on his special teams. So in terms of what he can do in his rotation as a pass rusher, I expect him to pick up right where he left off. The Bears have allowed him to practice now for a couple weeks and gotten comfortable in his spikes. So however many plays that you want to offer him, whatever down and distances, I expect Austin Booker to be a pass rushing boost for this team week 1.
Tom, let's look at the Bengals rushing offense because it's gotten better with Joe Flacco. No question about it. They're still ranked low. They have the fewest carries per game in the NFL at 19.3. But in 4 of 8 games, they gained no more than 55 yards. They went 2-3 in those games. 3 of the last 4 weeks, 85 yards against Detroit, 142 against Pittsburgh, and then 181 against the Jets. So that stretch, 5.94 a carry and 3 touchdowns with 29 first downs and 18 10-plus runs. They only had 2 10-plus runs in the first 4 games combined, and they're averaging 4.51 yard a carry on first down runs in this league right now. Second fewest runs in this league on first down. But is it the magic of Flacco being a good passer that sets up the ability to play action and all that to get the running game going for Cincinnati? What have you seen on tape?
Yes and yes. So I think, first of all, it's the beginning of the season. It's the curse of Joe Burrow. He will get us out of it. Joe will throw us to the win. Joe will give us an opportunity if we throw the ball to these talented, high-priced wide receivers. That's the way our offense is going to run. So the almost forget about the importance of the running game. But then you bring in Joe Flacco, and he starts exposing the receivers that they have in this football team. And now the defense has to put more bodies in the back end because they have to fill those passing lane voids. And then it should open up more opportunities for you to run the ball. And they have good running backs there. They have, a good offensive line. And then when you have Joe Flacco coming in from the very first week he came aboard and start putting up those types of numbers, have receivers that are so threatening in the number of targets they're getting that you have to change your philosophical thinking as a defensive coordinator, how you're going to try to control Cincinnati.
Yeah, Chase Brown out of Illinois, he's their number 1 back, and Samaje Perine has been in the league a long time. Both can catch the football, too, out of the backfield. So some things to watch. As we talk about quarterbacks, I thought of the idea this week, and, Batavia born and bred, Ken Anderson, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, one of 34 senior candidates for the 2026 Hall of Fame class. He's been a finalist many times. 9 semifinalists over the next month, and the 3 finalists they'll pick from to see if he'll make the Hall of Fame. But a former third-round pick out of Augustana College. He was 6'1", 210, playing this game for 192 games, Tommy, 197 touchdowns, ran for 2,200 yards and 20 more touchdowns. He was an NFL coach for 17 years with the Bengals, Jacksonville, and Pittsburgh, where he won a Super Bowl. Coach Ben Roethlisberger was working with Bruce Arians in Pittsburgh and led the NFL in passer rating 4 times. He was an MVP in 1981. Lot to dig into, but most importantly, an interesting journey as the former Bears fan. Former Bears fan, grew up in Chicago, is a Bears fan, Bengals first, because that's where he made his hay with a 16-year NFL career with one team. But we enjoyed our conversation. Here it is with Cincinnati Bengals great Kenny Anderson.
Well, if George Hallis would have listened to Jack Brickhouse, we might have been teammates. On that 85 team. I don't know, but, of course, everybody knows Jack Brickhouse, and his daughter was in my class at Augustana.
Oh,
and he would come out for Parents Weekend every year, which was always around a football game. And after my freshman year, he goes back and tells George that, I don't know, but there's this quarterback out of Augustana that looks pretty good. And then he'd come out the next year, and he said, he's getting better. And then, by my junior and senior year, he said, I think this kid has got something, but I think the Bears were one of the few teams that didn't scout me.
I did hear that story, but it's crazy. I'm assuming you grew up a big Bears fan.
Oh, heck yeah. My uncle, who's like my older brother, would take me to a Bears game every year. And I remember my favorite player to try to beat Harlan Hill, the great wide receiver, because we're walking out trying to get autographs, and I was too shy to go up to anybody. And Harlan saw that, and he came over to me and said, "Would you like my autograph?" And from then on, but of course, Billy Wade, Rudy Bukic, love those guys.
Do you remember your first Bears game at Wrigley and or most memorable?
The most memorable one was, God, I had to be, I don't know, maybe junior high or something like that. It was a Bears-Packer game. And we're there with a row of drunks from Green Bay in front of us and a row of drunks from Chicago behind us. It was a great game. I don't know what happened on the field, but it was a very entertaining game.
Nowadays, that would just break out into a big brawl at the end of the game, and it would be on social media and spread all over the place.
Oh, no, I know it. And that was, one of my dreams was to play at Wrigley Field. And I think the first time we played the Bears when I was with the Bengals was 72, and I think that might have been their first year in Soldier Field.
Yep.
So I never got to play in Wrigley.
Ken, when you look at the quarterback position today, and you look at what you went through back in the day, and I was in the USFL, and I played with Greg Landry, who I think at that time was the most sacked quarterback in the history of the NFL. The abuse you guys took, were you not protected enough, or are they overprotected today?
I think somewhere in the middle. It's you could hit a quarterback, in the head, in the knees, as long as it wasn't late. And I remember many times, getting the forearm through the face mask, after I let go of the football, and there was no penalty. Today I think, we're so aware of what the quarterback position means, and especially look at Cincinnati, with Joe Burrow not playing and what he means to the team. I think you've got to protect those guys, but I just don't like it when you brush him and it's a 15-yard penalty.
Do you ever think about wearing more than a double bar face mask after getting those forearm shivers to the nose?
Nah, it was, I almost converted when we went to the striped helmets because they didn't make the double bar in black. So our equipment guy, Tom Gray, we tried painting it, and then the paint would chip off, and then we tried putting electrical tape around it, and that would peel off. So most of the pictures you see, it's half gray, half black.
Well, you had to have room for the mustache.
That's exactly right.
Did you play your entire career with that mustache?
No, I did not grow it until 81. We had a tough season, in 80, and I went down on a golf trip with some guys, decided to let it grow, and it just stayed from there.
The abuse was so far worse than today. I mean, you were tough. You were also much more athletic than I think you ever got credit for. And I know you gained almost 2,300 yards in your career rushing. But you, to me, were a very professorial figure as a quarterback. Everything technique-wise, fundamentals seemed to be perfect. I know that's never the case, but Is that a fair analysis of you from the outside in without knowing how you were inside out?
Well, I think so, and I think a lot of that's because my first coach was Bill Walsh
Hmm.
when I got to Cincinnati, and he was really the first one that, you know, put the depth of the quarterback's drop to go along with the depth of the wide receivers. You know, as crazy as that may seem, but and that's what we worked on, our drops and our timing, and we had progressions we were going to go through. It's 1, 2, 3. Where's your outlet? And as you progressed in that offense, I mean, I know what I was looking at, and on my first step, I knew whether number 1 was going to be there. And so by the time I hit my set point, I was already on to number 2 and number 3. So a lot of it had to do with, I think, the genius of Bill Walsh. And then a guy that doesn't get a lot of credit late in my career was Lindy Infante, who came in and he ended up being a head coach in the league later on. But he was another one that I'd gotten into some bad habits, and we watched a lot of film and got back to those same mechanics. And that's kind of when all of a sudden the 81-82 seasons crept up again.
Ken, did you run out of shotgun other than third down, or were you under center first and second and maybe all third downs?
All downs. I never went to the shotgun. Personally, I didn't like it because, like I say, I wanted to see what was going on with the defense all the time. And I didn't trust my hands too much because I had to look the ball in. And by the time my head went up, I'd kind of lost people. So we never went to the shot. I don't think, back in that day, not many people did.
But when you got into coaching, were you required to coach quarterbacks out of shotgun?
Oh, heck yeah. That was a big part of it by the time I got into coaching. And, of course, those guys are in it so much now. I mean, you look at every high school is in shotgun now, right. And all the colleges, went out to Augustana for a game this year. And, and that's, their offense is out of shotgun. So, the quarterbacks nowadays, it's almost, one eye on the ball, one eye on the defense, and they're so adept at it.
But you led the NFL in passer rating 4 times, completion percentage 3 times. And when you retired, you were 6th all-time in passing yards at that time in NFL history, and the 81 MVP. That resulted in a Super Bowl appearance. But the interesting thing about that season, were you benched in week 1 by Forrest Gregg and then came back in week 2 to become the MVP and lead that team to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, and deservedly so. As our opening game after the first quarter against Seattle, and I had thrown 3 interceptions.
Okay.
And 2 of them run back for a touchdown, the other one back to the 1-yard line. So we're down 21-0, and mercifully he kind of pulled me. But, they had in 1979, drafted my replacement in the first round, Jack Thompson out of Washington State. And we were awful in 79. And, and when Forrest Gregg came in 80, you could see the team was getting better, and I didn't have a particularly good year. There were a couple of injuries in there. And so, a lot of people thought it was time for me to go. And so I was in training camp in 81. There were a lot of that rumblings in the paper, and there weren't many talk shows that were around at that point in time. But it was, I thought I had to play perfect to win my job back. And, you can't be perfect. And, I remember our last preseason game, I think we were playing Denver in Cincinnati, and we're on a 2-minute drive to end the first half, and we're down to the 5-yard line, and I throw an interception for a touchdown the other way and got booed off the field. And so the next week, I kind of, just tried to be perfect, and you couldn't do it. And, then I kind of talked my way into the job to start again the next week. And as we're flying to New York to play the Jets, I'm wondering, why did you do that, Kenny? It's the New York Sack Exchange for a reason. But and then I was really nervous when we get to Shea Stadium, and they had the U.S. Open tennis tournament going on at the same time. And our offensive line all took a van over early to the stadium. Well, we get there, and the offensive line isn't there, the starters. We go out to warm up, and the offensive line isn't there. Oh, I'm going, oh, crap. Well, the van driver's looking to Yankee Stadium, not Shea Stadium. And then with traffic, it took a while to get there. So anyway, we got off to a pretty good start. We won 31-30, and kind of took off from there.
So how many years did you get to play with Anthony Munoz?
Oh, well, he came in 1980.
Okay.
So from 80 to 86, he was my left tackle.
Right. So there's no way I could ever not talk to you because again, back in the 80s, it was like I started to have belief that I could play in the NFL. But when I was watching the Freezer Bowl, to me, I still think it's maybe the coldest game in history, Cincinnati against the San Diego Chargers in the playoffs that ended up being the beginning of 82. I almost didn't know if I wanted to play professional football because I watched you guys go out in the field and I was looking at how cold it was. So just some of your locker room memories or your game memories of that game, which is horrific. And I suggest any young person that wants to look at this, go to YouTube and look a couple minutes of the Freezer Bowl.
It was amazing because, of course, the Packers-Cowboys game was the coldest game by the thermometer. I think they were 13 below or something like that. It was only 9 below in Cincinnati, but with the wind chill, it was 59 below, which was the coldest game in history.
Oh, my God.
But I think my best moment of that game was in the first quarter because they had brought in heated benches, which we had never seen before. And so I'm over there, in the middle of the first quarter, we scored a touchdown, and I'm sitting there and, I'm sitting on my hands to try to warm them up, and they got these little slots for your feet to go in. And luckily, I kept my helmet on because all of a sudden there's a big roar in the crowd, and I'm standing up to see if there's a turnover if I'm going back in. Well, I go up, my feet don't come out, and I go down. And the first thing that hits is my face mask, and I'm hearing birds and seeing stars. And I'm going, oh, my God. I'm calling for the trainer for smelling salts. I said, I can't get knocked out of the AFC Championship game falling off the bench. And, of course, there weren't as many cameras in those days. There were no cell phones, so nobody caught it. But in today's world, I might have had to gone into concussion protocol and not finish the game.
Unbelievable. These stories this is why I love this sport, beyond just the obvious, the X's and O's and what it means each and every week and every snap. But the stories that this league can tell, and men like you, I'm grateful and appreciative.
I got one more for you because Tom was on the team. We played the Bears in '85 in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And Boomer was starting, and we're getting killed, and Boomer's getting killed. And so Sam White says, Kenny, I want you to go and play the fourth quarter. I go, why? He said, well, you haven't played much. We're in the playoff hunt. It's going in. And so I'm running out in the field, and all the Bears defense says, Kenny, throw the ball. We need more sacks. And I go, oh, this doesn't sound good. So I'm looking over the sidelines. They signal a pass, and I'm thinking off tackle right's a much better call. And so now it's second down and 8. They signal in a pass, and I'm going toss sweep to the left. I think it's got a good chance. Well, now it's third down and 4, and they send it in a pass, and I'm going to draw plays. Ought to really work here. It was 3 and out, and I go to the sideline, and Sam says, well, we're signaling in passes. Why aren't you calling them? I said, Sam, you got the third-string quarterback sending them in, and he doesn't know what the hell's going on. So I'm just kind of – I threw one short yardage pass in that game.
I have one more question about that game, because on our locker room, there was always a rumor that Sam Weiss would water down the field on those extremely hot and humid days. And it was a hot and humid day that day. And so we were all believing that you guys would water it down so it would increase the humidity and the heat of that field. Is that false, or is there any truth to that at all?
No, there's no truth to that at all.
Okay.
It would never do that. But you had to kind of know the field, especially when it got cold, because the end zone towards the visitors' locker room, and of course we had that really crummy AstroTurf back in those days.
Yeah.
But if there was any moisture, the end zone and near the end zone would freeze on that side of the field. So you kind of had to know where you were on cold days in that situation.
That was
the whole
hot.
field advantage.
It was so hot that day, I remember.
Well, hell, you didn't have to play much. You had such a big lead.
Baloney. Listen, we led the league in time of possession that year because of our running game. It was the defense that didn't have to play a lot.
But I remember the first time I went in the Soldiers Field back in '72 in the visitors' locker room. It was so nice that they only had one stool in there in the bathroom, and it was open. There was no thing. So you just sit there in the middle of the locker room if you had to go, and okay, I guess this is it. So I said, thank you, Soldiers Field.
I got one for you. So you played for Forrest Gregg. Did you ever have a moment because you're a Bears fan, just talk to him about Ditka? Did you ever have time to to explore some of the past?
No,
Or Paul Brown and Coach Hallis?
No.
Brown, Coach Hallis?
Well, whenever we went to Chicago to play with Coach Brown, we couldn't take our playbooks with us because, George Hallis knew we always went out to a movie the night before a game, and he was going to have somebody break into one of the rooms and copy a game plan. So we had to leave them on our desk Saturday before we left. We couldn't take those with us.
I tell you, that's the era of that suspicion. The George Allen used to think the same way when I played for him in the USFL. He was thinking that if we went to the opponent's stadium to practice, that they would have guys spying on us. So he would have guys wear different guys' jerseys, so they got confused on who they were looking at.
But we always had that theory about the Oilers. There was an apartment building up on a hill overlooking our practice field. So, we switched numbers. I think, okay, I'm wearing 42, but they don't think that that's me lining up under center. I could never understand that switching jersey stuff. But then the other one was going out into the old Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. And then there was a bare light bulb in the locker room, and Paul Brown would always hush and he'd point up to there. He's listening. So we had to be quiet in the locker room.
You both have been touched by unbelievable coaches. I mean, unbelievable history. And then you were a coach as well. We don't want to forget that part of your career. I think, you spent 40 years in football as a player and coach. And then you got a Super Bowl ring when Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers under Mike Tomlin win the Super Bowl. I covered that game. And you were also at Jacksonville and, of course, the Bengals. What did the coaching part of your career mean to you as you reflect?
I tell you what, I really enjoyed coaching, and I was always the kind of the guy, the player that, I enjoyed the practices as much as the game, the challenge of going out there every day and getting better to execute something. And so that was always fun for me as a coach to be part of, the process of planning a game and getting a quarterback ready to play. And it was almost, when you're an assistant coach, anticlimactic to a certain point because, the game comes, it's all up to the court. There's not much I can do at that point to help him. So it was, and I just, but to be touched by so many guys, and one guy that kind of was my mentor, Tom Moore, who he was with the Steelers when I met him at an offense-defense camp that I was one of the players that they brought in. And for some reason, we kind of hit it off and then became friends when, of course, he was with the Steelers and then was Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator all those years. And he was the only guy, he and I would talk every Monday morning about how we did. And here he is. I'm 76 and I've been retired for a bunch of years now. And he's 86 and still going at it down in Tampa.
Ken, we had an opportunity to see him a couple of years ago, and I made it beeline to him. He was sitting on the bench. I just wanted to shake his hand. You talk about love of the game. Holy smokes.
Well, he's forgotten more football than I know, I'll tell you that.
When you had young quarterbacks come into your quarterback room, was there a consistent fundamental that you looked at first specifically to see if they needed change in that, whether it's delivery, footwork, fundamental throwing positions, or did you just kind of look at what the quarterback offered you, and then if you had to make changes accordingly?
Well, I think a little bit of both. I think the one thing that you can't change with a quarterback is his throwing motion. That's kind of God-given. That's what you do in the way a quarterback does. And so I was more in the footwork and the timing and being ready to throw. And I had all kinds, when we were in Jacksonville, I had, Byron Leftwich, who was the smartest quarterback I'd ever been around. But fundamentally, I've got shots where he would drop the ball down below his knee as he was winding up. And, you can't change things like that. So, when I was, coaching and I was scouting people, that was the first thing I look at in the quarterback is his throwing motion, because I figured I couldn't change that. And then is he athletic enough to do what I want to do footwork wise? And so that's what I spent, and again, going back to what Bill Walsh taught me is, well, that's the progression on this. And, how are we going to get through it is a single high, two high read, and to try to get the ball out as quick as we can to make it as easy as we could, Tom, on the offensive line.
Well, Ken, so when I broke in the league, we had Walter Payton, and we were in the huddle, and we said, "I right, toss 28, break." And we went to the line of scrimmage, and that our alert for an audible was an active color that would change the play at the line of scrimmage. However,
I bet you the active color was orange or blue.
Yes, exactly. 100%. But the modern day terminology, too confusing. Is it right on in terms of the modern day football, or is it overboard?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, and that's why I don't know. We had a wristband that Roethlisberger wore in Pittsburgh, and he must have had great eyes, because I don't know how the hell he could read the print on that. But I was always the one in charge of checking the wristband, and I'd have to have the secretary blow it up into an 8x12 so I could read it. And of course he's got this little thing on his wrist. But it's kind of what you're used to, and I think that's I know when Joe Flacco got here just and played on 3 days in a game, for the Bengals a couple of weeks ago against Green Bay. It's just learning the terminology and how to call a play. And I know that, you kind of, as stupid as it sounds, sometimes I just get in front of a mirror and read it off and try to get the way that it flows off your lips.
Did they shuttle plays into you during your day, or did they give you hand signals?
It started off with messenger guards with Paul Brown.
Right.
And then it ended up with Forrest Gregg that we signal him in.
Okay.
But it was always fun when the guard would come in, and especially if you're playing like we played the Packers, in Milwaukee, and both benches are on the side. So if we're on our bench and the guards, we had to run down to the other goal line. He was a little winded by the time he got there. They come in and say, "Kenny, 58. Maybe it was 68. Oh, it could have been 78. Oh, hell, call what you want."
What do you think of today's quarterbacks? You watch a lot of football. Not as much.
Yeah, yes and no. The only games I'll watch completely from start to finish is the Bengals game on. The Thursday night games and the Sunday night games. I'm good till halftime. And then if the Bengals are playing at 4 on the road, and I might watch a little bit of a 1 o'clock game. Otherwise, I'm just kind of putzing around doing other stuff. But I mean, I think there's so many good quarterbacks in the league now. Of course, I think it starts, in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, who I think, I don't know if I'd trade him for anybody, and then you got Mahomes and Josh Allen and gosh, the kid at Washington who's hurt now, but, he had a great rookie year. I think you've got one in Caleb Williams in Chicago. I think with good coaching he's really going to be a good player. And, it's amazing how you watch some of these quarterbacks and all of a sudden it may be their second or third team, but they get around, good players and good coaching. Baker Mayfield, for example, with what he's doing down in Tampa Bay. Daniel Jones, what he's doing in Indianapolis. So I think coaching still makes a difference. But I remember my year when I was drafted in 71, it was the first year of the quarterback. It was Jim Plunkett, Archie Manning, and Dan Pastorini with the first 3 picks of the draft. And then Lynn Dickey and I went in the 3rd round, and Joe Theismann in the 4th. And they did an article in Sports Illustrated about that class a couple of years ago. And Jim Plunkett said, of all the guys, Kenny was the lucky one. He got to go to Cincinnati with an established team and an established coach and Bill Walsh. And then, sure, you look at Jim. I mean, he goes to New England, had no success. And he goes to San Francisco, has no success. He gets to Oakland around some good players and a guy like Tom Flores, and all of a sudden he's winning Super Bowls. So you are a product of your situation a lot of times.
All right, we'll wrap it up. Oh.
Just one more thing. You think about these kids coming out of college. I think I saw yesterday $170 million being paid to college coaches who have already been fired. And you think of the quarterbacks Brian Kelly, his quarterback was considered a Heisman candidate at the beginning of the year. You think of where Arch Manning is. But the whole idea of these quarterbacks have difficulty developing with consistency in college, and then they have to come to the pro game where it's even more difficult.
Well, and sometimes take a pay cut, with the NIL money. But like I say, it's just, the quarterback be in a situation where he has a chance to thrive. But I know one thing: if they'd had NIL money in my day, I could have had all the hungry hobo sandwiches I wanted in Rock Island.
And why?
You would have never finished in Augustana.
Yeah, you would have been in the portal for sure. Did you get recruited by any Division Ones?
No, I could have gone to other schools the size of Augustana. I was, going to Augustana originally to play basketball and baseball. I thought basketball was my favorite sport. Baseball was my best sport, I thought. And so I was going out there, and my high school coach, Bill Day, talked me into going out and trying out. And I've still got a copy of the letter here. It was dated June 28th when I wrote the coach at Augustana, could I try out for football? And so if he hadn't talked me into that, I'd have been teaching school at New Trier with my uncle instead of going to the Cincinnati Bengals.
That's an amazing story. So that leads me to our final question, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Certainly worthy in spades. I mean, your accomplishments and your longevity and the type of quarterback you were. I know it's always hard for players to wait. What would it mean?
Oh, I mean, it would be great, but I don't think I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, worrying about it. I'm in Batavia's Wall of Honor. I'm in Augustana's Tribe of Vikings Hall of Fame. I'm in the Bengals Ring of Honor. I didn't know there was such a thing, but I'm in the National Quarterback Club Hall of Fame. They just started an Illinois High School Sports Hall of Fame. I made that one. So, I sit back and look, and I was just so lucky to, number one, to be a product of Batavia, Illinois, which was the greatest place in the world to grow up. And the experience I had at Augustana. And then, a kid from Batavia can play 16 years in the National Football League. That ain't too bad. So I'm very satisfied with that. And if it happened one day, great. But, we'll see. I'm not holding my breath, put it that way.
Well, we'll be rooting for you, and we wish you nothing but the best as you enjoy all that you do. I know you have a foundation as well. Is that still close to your heart?
Yeah, the Ken Anderson Alliance, which is helping adults with developmental disabilities. So we're excited about that. And so if you come to Cincinnati, you're staying downtown. Ruby's Steakhouse is right across the street from a lot of the hotels down there. So a great place to eat.
All right. Thank you for the tip. Thank you for your time, most importantly.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
How about that for storytelling time, Tommy?
It's an educational experience in NFL history. When you look at things from the point of view from AFC, because we're so concentrated in the NFC throughout our football lives, and you have a chance to learn from Ken Anderson, from where he grew up and how proud of he is of his upbringing. When you go to Augustana and you're drafted in the NFL as a quarterback, you have the type of career he had in an era where the physicalness at the quarterback position was like any other. I mean, Ken Anderson, I had such an appreciation for how intelligent of a man he is. What a great, leads you into discussions, can go off on a tangent topic that maybe you never thought of or heard of. And it was just an awesome conversation to have with him today.
Bold, vibrant, and brewed right here in the U.S. It's the perfect beer for tailgates, backyard grills, and post-touchdown celebrations. Celebrate responsibly, Chicago, and score big at your local Chevy dealer. The Chevy Silverado will take you through this season in style. Chevy Drive Chicago, official truck partner of the Chicago Bears. I appreciate the fact that you guys have a lot of similarities, growing up in this area and whatnot, and being able to make it to the NFL. But I was blown away by one thing, not what he said, but what you said. And it was the AFC title game. Chargers, Bengals in the minus 59 wind chill. Coldest game in NFL history that you thought twice about an NFL career after watching that game. I thought nothing would stop a Tom Thayer from finding his way to an NFL starting lineup. So that one shocked me.
Listen, so the Cincinnati offensive linemen, when they came out of the locker room, they all came out sleeveless and they were acting like they were going out there in, 65-degree perfect football weather. And then you looked at San Diego, and they were coming out of the locker room a little bit slower, and the impact of the frigid temperatures on that warm weather football team, you could see it was taking a toll on them. But it was more of up the view of the Cincinnati Stadium, which is along the river, and you saw the smoke coming up and from the town, from the river. And that's like, the NFL was making an impression on me because I wanted to play in the NFL so badly. Then I was looking at these playoff conditions going, oh my God, I don't know if I could do it.
I mean, you grew up a Chicagolander. You didn't even hit Maui yet.
Listen, it was 59 degrees below zero. They didn't have all the sophisticated warm weather equipment they have now. They didn't have the types of benches that you could sit on and keep your body warm with all these heaters on the sideline. It was
Listen, I've asked you this before. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, I get you run around a little bit, you get a little warm, but 59 below zero, please. Hey, Bears fans, Steinhoffel's a proud partner of the Chicago Bears. This Bears season, Steinhoffel's is partnering with Special Spaces Illinois to create dream bedrooms for children battling cancer. For every false start caused by the Bears defense during a home game, Steinhoffel's donates $1,000 to Special Spaces Illinois. Shop in store and online at steinhoffels.com. But I also appreciate some of the old stories with coaches and whatnot. And you told me about your Notre Dame days and Coach Faust and being in a locker room where, the locker rooms were crude back then. They were as uncomfortable for the visitor as you possibly imagine. And I'm sure the home locker rooms weren't that much better. Now they're luxurious.
Yeah, Ken brought that up in a couple of his stories about, throughout his career. But I always say, me, as if I had my own stadium, I would not make it comfortable for the opponent. When we went into dress in you're familiar with the old Cleveland Stadium. You're familiar with the old San Francisco Stadium, Candlestick Park. For them to put opponents' football teams inside those locker rooms, it was offensible. You could arrest the opponent's owner.
The San Francisco one, wasn't that super tiny? It looked like a high school.
It was fit for a baseball team, basically.
Yeah.
And so you got 2 and 3 guys deep for every locker. I don't care what your status is. I don't care how many Pro Bowls or Hall of Fame it was just the worst of the worst. And the same thing with your Cleveland Stadium before they built a new stadium.
That place was some nasty to it. When Mexican heritage meets American brewing, game day gets an upgrade. Introducing Cruz Blanca, a line of Mexican-American premium cervezas. The other thing about Ken is that he was a very good coach. And so he learned, obviously, from Bill Walsh. But to stay in the league and be a part of the game for such a long period of time like yourself, I appreciate the football lifers. I really do. I don't care what aspect of the sport you're involved in, whether it be management, coaching, playing, or being a broadcaster. It's really something I'm very respectful of, and because it's not an easy sport. There's nothing easy about it. It takes a lot of work for one game, and whether you're a player or something other than that, it takes a ton of your time and away from your family, and you got to really love the game. And you could tell that Kenny Anderson loved the game.
But one thing about it, if you take your path, my path, Ben Johnson's path, Ken Anderson's path, the effect it has in the big picture of your life. It's not a solely magnifying glass on only you, me, Ben, Ken, anybody. It's the surrounding supporting cast that we've had and how it affects all of their lives. And so that's the great thing about when you set your sights on a goal academically, athletically, wherever it takes you, and how it affects the other people around you in your life.
All right, let's dip back into the Bears-Bengals game. Before we wrap things up, we got to go about their defense. So, yeah, statistically, if we look at statistics, people are going to say, wow, this is going to be a mowdown. But you can't look at it that way because the work that's done after your last game to get better, and the things that you always say are the correctable mistakes. You know, it's one thing if you don't have the desire to be better. These guys, we're only halfway through a season. There's a desire to be better. This is a very difficult AFC North. It's a very difficult NFC North. So you just can't assume anything. It's a young football team on the defensive side of the ball, Tommy. 2 young linebackers, young defensive backs, young defensive linemen. And, yeah, Trey Hendrickson's there. He's banged up, though. He's got a bad hip. He's a team-leading 4 sacks. He is a guy that you got to account for. But don't rookie linebackers improve over time? They've combined for 106 tackles. But they're struggling a little bit, I think, just on their immediate recognition. So you can probably, test that right out of the gate to see where they're at. And they're not a good tackling team to this point.
Well, the first thing I'm going to test is the message by the head coach leading up to this game. So Ben Johnson said that the leadership in that locker room, they have to take more accountability to correct some of these mistakes that are being made on the field. And they have that right, and they have that ability. It's about focus from the time you open the doors to the facility. When you go through meetings, you go through walkthroughs, you go through practice, you go through your individual tape study. If you're a young guy and you're struggling to learn something, then ask a veteran to help you out, because you can always do that. They can go to their assistant coaches and they can help you out. So that's the message that Ben started the week with. Cincinnati is coming off a defensive only meeting, closed door meeting, defense only. So now you got a couple of rookies in there that aren't going to say anything. You have Trey in there who's injured, has an injured hip, doesn't know if he's going to play or not. So you're trying to find who is going to deliver this message to these defensive players that is going to factor into our next performance. And so the 2 messages from the head coach are going to be interesting. But like you said, the struggles that the defense has had, is Al Golden going back into his book of tricks when he was the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame? And he put USC through struggles, and they create a turnover. So he has a history with the player, Caleb Williams, not necessarily the team, the Chicago Bears. So it's going to be interesting to see how all these little nuances factor into the game on Sunday.
Got a lot of speed on that back end, too. Got to mention DJ Turner out of Michigan. 4.26 speed. He was benched in week 1, but he's reclaimed his starting job. And
so is Ken Anderson.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Dax Hill, also a Michigan product, a 4.38 nickel. So that's just a sample of some of the speed they have, which also spills over to special teams, too. So should be an interesting matchup. Weather forecast, Tom. We can't leave you. Well, what do we got? Outdoor stadium, Cincinnati.
It's going to be 41 for a low, 55 for a high, mostly sunny. And I think the conditions are going to be perfect working conditions for the Cincinnati area. 100% chance of rain today. So maybe they had to go indoors for practice.
Yeah, well, as long as we keep dry, that's all that's good.
Yep.
And we don't need to get the parkas out just yet, but November's knocking on the door. And, Tom, you get an extra hour of sleep before kickoff.
Oh,
you're
glorious.
Make
that just means another hour laying in bed, rolling around.
Hey, did you sleep well before games? Because you certainly don't sleep well now before games. Nor do I. You didn't sleep well before games? No.
My energy and just
angst,
desire for the game got me through at a high level, high energy.
Good news, Chicago United Airlines is getting brand new planes with all the bells and whistles like Bluetooth connectivity, screens at every seat, and a room for everyone's roller bag. United, proud to fly the Chicago Bears, and you too. Got to also give a shout out to Bears equipment man, the legendary, come on, Tony Medlin kicked off the coat drive today, Tommy. All the way into,
he did.
Yeah, all the way into 2026. Kevin Byard, an ambassador for that as well. So if you have gently used coats, or if you so desire to get some new ones out there and throw them in at your Jewel Osco and any other locations around the Chicagoland area, including Bears Fit in Vernon Hills, always a fantastic thing. It's a rite of passage for the season when Tony hits the podium, and he did on Wednesday.
It's just a beautiful event, man, because when you're driving around wherever you're driving around in the middle of winter and you see people that don't have the proper coat on or anything, I appreciate this coat drive as much as I have any event throughout my entire time with the Bears.
Right, and we all have those coats that no longer fit, or somebody doesn't want them anymore, so somebody can use them, that's for sure. So help out the cause. All right, that's going to wrap us up for former Bengals great quarterback Ken Anderson, the Batavia product. Thank you so much. And for Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe now to the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.